Hello and thanks for joining us here on Middle East Matters. I'm Rochelle Ferguson-Biahi. Coming up in this week's show. Down with capitalism, the chant from protesters in Lebanon as they take to the streets to denounce growing economic hardship in the country. After years of legal woes, Turkish officials flood a 12,000-year-old town as part of efforts to power the region. Plus, what were they thinking? The International Association of Athletics Federation comes under fire as competitors complain of unbearable temperatures at the World Championships in Doha. We take you first to Lebanon, where a growing economic and financial crisis has sparked frustration amongst those who are living there. On Sunday, protesters paralysed the capital, Beirut, as they gathered near Parliament, set tyres alight on major roads and chanted, "Down with capitalism." Well, the deteriorating economic situation has sparked growing tensions between the ruling and working classes. France 24's Charlie James has this report.
Hundreds in the streets of Beirut, protesting over increasingly difficult living conditions as Lebanon's economic crisis takes a turn for the worse.
The main reason we are protesting is living conditions. We are part of the people, and we endure what the people endure. We are here to demand our rights like everyone else. It's time for us to take to the streets.
Tensions flared at points between police and demonstrators, many of whom hold the government responsible for the country's economic woes. Lebanon's struggling economy has been crumbling under enormous debt, worsened by a series of political deadlocks and corruption. In recent weeks, the nation's U.S. dollar-reliant currency, the Lebanese pound, has lost ground against the dollar, defying the official exchange rate, which has been fixed for more than 2 decades. This also fueling concerns that dollar reserves may be running low. Earlier in September, Prime Minister Said Hariri declared what he called an economic emergency, just months after his government approved sweeping budget cuts.
We are working on reducing the size of the public debt through partnership between the public and private sectors, through transparent concessions, and we will guarantee the rights of the state.
The cuts are designed to tackle a public debt of $86 billion and a debt-to-GDP ratio of over 150%, one of the highest in the world. Authorities are seeking to unlock $11 billion in pledged international investment, but donors say they want to see progress on reform before releasing the funds.
Next to Iraq, which is grappling with how to eradicate landmines and explosive remnants of war, which can prove deadly for civilians. Now, in addition to previous conflicts, unexploded shells, grenades and bombs from battles with ISIS mean Iraq is considered amongst the most contaminated countries in the world. Well, France 24's Lucille Wasserman and Simona Fulton sent us this report.
The bomb disposal team of the civil defense is on mission in the old city of Mosul. A few days earlier, residents alerted them about unexploded ordnances in a building destroyed during the war against the IS group.
We already removed around 40 remnants of the war. I think there are still more because the IS group used this building as a weapons depot.
More than 2 years have passed since the battle for Mosul, but much of the old city has yet to be cleared of explosives. The massive levels of destruction as well as human remains complicate the task, and the civil defense isn't always equipped to face the hazards.
Sometimes we find UXOs that contain gases. Several among us have already suffered injuries because of it.
It's not just a risk for these experts, but also for civilians who bear the brunt of casualties. Mukhaybar lost his leg in March after stepping on an improvised explosive device south of the city. He's receiving treatment in a hospital in East Mosul, managed by international organizations.
I'm really satisfied. I feel very comfortable.
Mukhaybar should receive his prosthetic leg in a few months, but not all victims enjoy the same access.
There is a huge number of the amputated persons, especially inside Mosul and outside.
The scale of injuries is one challenge, the quality of care another. Bilal lost both legs in 2017, but his father says that the artificial limbs he received are not suitable.
Because he doesn't have legs, the bones are touching the plastic.
Day by day, he suffered more and more pain. The hospital advised us to get robotic limbs, but they are too expensive.
The family has received no financial support. The lack of resources makes matters even worse for amputees, who are estimated in their thousands in this region alone.
Now, after decades of legal wranglings, Turkish authorities have flooded a 12,000-year-old town as part of a dam project to power the region. Hasankeyf is one of the oldest sites of continuous human settlement on Earth. It's some 3,000 residents say they're devastated about leaving behind both their legacy and their livelihood. Shona Bhattacharyya and Ludovic de Foucaud sent us this report.
It was meant to be his final resting place. Instead, this male corpse is being moved at the request of his son.
We have to move it, because if water comes, it'll be submerged. And then how can we visit the grave? How can we pray for him?
The Kurdish man pauses as the coffin goes by.
We're all against the dam. The government built this dam to make us, residents, leave the area.
A truck takes the corpses to the cemetery in the new town, 2 kilometers away, located on higher ground. Local authorities are still building the 700 or so homes that will house those Hasankeyf residents who applied for them. The new town is strikingly different from the old one. Here, every house is the same and features amenities that many consider a luxury.
There's electricity, water is coming, but there are still some things they're finishing.
Mehmet says the government sold residents' houses for more than the compensation they received for their old ones.
That's 8,000 to 9,000 a year. People don't have jobs. Where am I going to find that money?
Is it going to be difficult?
Of course it'll be hard.
To preserve the historic nature of Hasankeyf, authorities have displaced 8 monuments, cutting them in pieces and rebuilding them. On the other side of the Tigris, those monuments told the story of this former regional capital on what was once the Silk Road. Suleiman, an activist whose family lived here for centuries, swears he will be the last to leave.
I grew up here, my father grew up here, my grandfather too. 10,000 years of civilization is coming to an end. That makes me sad.
The castle and its age-old artifacts overlooking the valley will become an island, open to visitors. After the waters rise, it's unclear if 80% of the town's residents will continue to live from tourism, or if 100,000 visitors will continue to come every year. They pray the gates of history don't close on Hasankeyf forever.
Next, unbearable temperatures and simply not enough spectators. Just some of the criticism levelled at the International Athletics Federation over the 2019 World Championships in Qatar. Exhausted by the relentless heat, a number of top athletes have already dropped out of their races. France 24's Anke Uller has details.
French racewalker Johan Diniz came to the 2019 World Athletics Championships in top form, continuing to train in the hallways of his air-conditioned hotel. But the defending champion in the 50-kilometer race was in for a rude awakening. Temperatures on the streets of Doha can hit 31 degrees Celsius at night, with 75% humidity. Just 16 kilometers into his race, he threw in the towel.
I was motivated at the start, ready to defend my title. But my legs gave out quick, and I'm exhausted. I'm out of steam after 16 kilometers. This climate is maybe not for me.
The hellish conditions overshadowed the start of the competition. Despite all outdoor races beginning after midnight, dozens of long-distance runners dropped out due to heat exhaustion, while others fainted along the way. In the women's marathon, 28 athletes out of 68 abandoned the race, an unprecedented failure rate. To combat the heat, the Qatari government shelled out big money to install state-of-the-art cooling systems in its stadiums. Its much-touted energy efficiency has been disputed by environmental activists, and doctors say the difference in temperature compared to outdoors can cause its own health problems.
It's not entirely devoid of risk. The risk of dehydration is high, and that can lead to acute heart rhythm problems.
More often than not, competitors looked out onto near-empty stands, a fact widely mocked on social media. The humiliation amplified by the fact that Doha had promised every session would be sold out in its prospectus to the IAAF. The fiasco does not bode well for Qatar's hosting of the 2022 FIFA World Cup, which has already been widely criticized for its environmental impact and claims of corruption. And Qatar's conduct in bidding for the World Athletics Championships remains under criminal investigation in France.
And finally for you, Lebanon has launched its first exhibition of the late Spanish artist Pablo Picasso's works in the capital, Beirut. The exhibition at the Sourcok Museum looks at how Picasso explored family in his work. On display are mother and child paintings, depictions of childhood, and his very own take on fatherhood. The exhibition includes a selection of Picasso's paintings, etchings, drawings, and even sculptures. We are very much up to date. Thank you for watching this edition of Middle East Matters.
From North America to the southern tip of Patagonia, join us for a look at the latest political, economic, cultural and social news from the Americas.
Inside the Americas, presented by Jeannie Godula on France 24 and France24.com.